What's up, everyone? It's Prowler, fresh off of watching the latest and, dare I say, greatest Sonic movie yet. Let me start off with a couple of things. I am in no way a movie critic, and this is actually my first ever review for the channel, so bear with me if I'm all over the place. Secondly, I will only be talking spoilers at the very end of the video, and will give ample warning before doing so if anyone needs to bail out at that point. Alrighty then, without further ado, take it away, Eggman.
Let's do this!
So first and foremost, one of the things I want to dive into is the characters of the movie and the growth each one goes through throughout the entire film. The biggest one in my eyes being Sonic, where we all expect him to be the smart-mouthed, wise guy, always looking for adventure and fun. There's a particular point in the movie where Sonic is pushed to the brink and his character arc takes a dramatic turn. Not surprising in the slightest that it only took the arrival of Shadow to cause this. Speaking of Shadow, the movie does a pretty good job of introducing us to him with an action-packed sequence to kick things off. The way he navigates being locked away for 50 plus years, processing grief from the loss of Maria, and ultimately just being hellbent on revenge offer a fascinating parallel characterization compared to our typically carefree and spirited hero Sonic. Tails and Knuckles both get their time to shine as well. That Pikachu line from the trailer still made my entire theater crack up.
Pika Pika!
But more so than just adding comedic relief, Team Sonic goes through its fair share of ups and downs. There's even one moment in the movie that's taken right out of the gameplay of Sonic Heroes, which was so cool to see. Tom and Maddie Wachowski obviously returned, but take a much larger backseat in this one opposed to the first two movies. Not to say they don't play an important role for the time they're allotted, but I think the filmmakers realized what us fans were specifically looking for by this third installment. Now for the big boy himself, Dr. Ivo Robotnik, aka Dr. Eggman. I don't want to go too in-depth in this because of potential spoilers, but the dynamic between him and Gerald Robotnik is Jim Carrey cranking the crazy meter up way past the maximum set point. The way both characters are portrayed through the conclusion was an incredible transformation to see, and I have to say Jim Carrey really nails it in the final act of Sonic the Hedgehog 3. For anyone familiar with the Sonic video game franchise, you already know this film was heavily inspired by Sonic Adventure 2, which was no easy task to live up to considering many of us old-time Sonic fans still hold that game in our hearts as one of the best in the series. But I think the writers, director, and actors did a phenomenal job of mixing nostalgia, expectations, and fresh new ideas together to make one awesome movie. Shadow's story is relatively the same as the game, but again we get a new perspective of Shadow and Gerald Robotnik's relationship in the movie where Sonic Adventure 2 never had them face to face. Of course, Shadow Generations give us a whole other side of that dynamic, but again the focus was on Sonic Adventure 2's story. Speaking of Gerald, this honestly was a brand new plot point that I was extremely interested in when it was announced he was indeed alive and interacting with other characters in the movie. For those unfamiliar with the games, Gerald was killed by the military before the events that you could play through in Sonic Adventure 2. In my opinion, Jim Carrey does go a little over the top in his portrayal of Gerald, but if Eggman can go crazy after spending time isolated on the Mushroom Planet,
It's time to say goodbye to this piece of shiitake planet!
then I guess Gerald can go crazy enduring what he had to in the movie. As for what actually happens in the film, I would say the first two-thirds are very movie universe specific, as in there are fun nods to the games, but this is very movie-centric, specifically with the locations of Tokyo and London. The final third of the film is just action-packed sequence after sequence that left all of us in the theater on the edge of our seats. Honestly, I got the same feeling I did as a kid playing the last levels of Sonic Adventure 2 that I did at the end of the film. Personally, I loved how everything was tied together, and they did a pretty good job of wrapping up the general story they were trying to tell with this film. There were a few unanswered questions that leave me annoyed being the ever-persistent Sonic fan that I am, but overall, nothing detrimental that harms the film plotline in any way. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 had a lot of expectations and hype to live up to for me personally, being the biased and huge Sonic fan that I've been for the better part of 30-ish years now. Shadow is not a character you can screw up for this franchise or fanbase, and I'm happy to say they did him the every bit of justice he deserved. The movie is certainly not without its flaws though. There are a few jokes that don't land as intended, and of course, being a Sonic movie, they have to include a long and in my opinion, drawn out dance that just goes on and on. You'll know it when you see it. I'm happy to report we don't have a ridiculous ruined wedding scene that provides next to nothing plot-wise. All that being said, you can truly tell where the writers did their absolute best to make older fans and newer fans appreciate the time and energy dedicated to this movie, and for me, the appreciation was reciprocated right back at them. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is a solid 8.5 out of 10 for me. Go see this movie right now if you consider yourself a Sonic fan, and heck, go see it even if you aren't. Spoiler time. Warning, this next section is all about spoilers from the movie, so if you have not seen it yet, please stop watching, but make sure you come on back after to join the discussion. Alrighty, if you've been on my channel before, I put out a video where I predicted a few things for Sonic 3 and I freaking nailed it. The first and big one that I'm very nervous about going forward for the franchise is the death of Eggman at the conclusion of the film. Like I discussed before, Jim Carrey teased retiring after the release of Sonic 2, so it was still a question mark about his involvement in this one until almost the release of the first trailer for Sonic 3. However, in the world of Hollywood, actors don't last forever, and Sonic 3 seemingly has concluded Jim Carrey's tenure as the main antagonist of the franchise. It was amazing to see his big sacrifice at the end to save humanity and finally give Agent Stone the credit of being his friend instead of just his lackey. I'm curious where the character of Agent Stone goes from here. Does he continue down the same villain path as the late Doctor, or are there other plans for Stone? And can you really have Sonic without Robotnik? Time will tell. Next up, we have to talk about those mid and post-credit scenes. In my opinion, I think they should have swapped the scenes for the hype factor. I think we all knew Shadow was going to survive at the end and wouldn't be a one and done character. It was still so cool to see him retrieve his inhibitor ring after crashing back on Earth, or at least I'm assuming it was Earth. And another question, what happened to the Master Emerald and or Chaos Emeralds? Last we knew, Shadow was still in possession of them when he was pushing the Eclipse Cannon away from Earth in his super form before seemingly perishing in the explosion alongside Dr. Eggman. We'll have to see how the next movie or show potentially addresses what happened to or the location of the emeralds. Now for the biggest and craziest spoiler that everyone is going to be racking their brains over. I'm of course talking about the introduction of Metal Sonic and Amy Rose. Count me in as one of those people that lost their minds when Metal Sonic first appeared and attacked Sonic, but I certainly was not expecting a whole group of Metal Sonics. Are these more creations of Eggman, perhaps using the power he stole from Sonic's quill similarly to the first movie? Or is this something new entirely, and do we have a main Metal Sonic that could reach the same levels as he did in Sonic Heroes? Imagine Metal Overlord on the big screen, holy crap, that would be insane. And lastly, we can't forget about Amy Rose and her hammering introduction.
Oh, brother!
In a surprise role reversal, she arrives to save Sonic from the horde of Metal Sonics, decked out in a hooded robe and only revealing herself when Sonic asks who she is. Now, while this is obviously an exciting character to be introduced into the franchise, it seems to invite even more questions about the future. Is this Amy going to be similar to the early versions of the character who obsessed over Sonic, or could she be more toned down like we've seen in the likes of recent games such as Sonic Frontiers? Are the writers going to explore a possible adaptation of Sonic CD where we'll see Little Planet and the Time Stones? Who knows? Let me know what you guys think in the comments about the movie first and foremost. Did you love it and give it a high rating like me, or was it disappointing? Also, let's dive into spoilers as well. Have we seen the last of Eggman in the movies? Are you hyped about Amy and Metal Sonic being introduced? Or where do you want to see the franchise go from here? Thanks for watching, and I can't wait to see you all next time.